Okay, so we are gathered here today for a very special time.
Too funny.
Tonight is Yud Tes Kislev, which is a special holiday, a special day on the Jewish calendar, on the Chassidic calendar. It's actually a holiday. And this is the day that we say, we wish each other L'Shana Tova, just like before Rosh Hashanah, we wish each other L'Shana Tova, not for the year, but L'Shana Tova, Tikaseh v'Sechasem, you should have a good year. B'limud HaChassidus, in the learning of the Chassidus that we're going to be talking about, U'B'darkei HaChassidus, and not only in the learning, but in the following, in the ways of Chassidus, meaning following in the ways of what we're going to be learning and studying about. So I wish you all a wonderful year, and wishing a good year is always a good thing, right? Any opportunity that we have is a good time. So I wanted to start with telling you the story of Yud Tes Kislev, the story of why it is that we're celebrating the night. What is it that we're celebrating? Why is it that we make this a day of celebration, and why is it important? And then we're going to go into Hanukkah as well, which is also next week, and which is also a beautiful holiday, right? In this dark, dark time and the coldest time of year and the darkest time of year is when we are specifically lighting the candles, and we have the candles of the teachings of these inner wisdom that we're going to be talking about, as well as the candles of Chassidus, of the candles of Chanukah, which we light and bring in light into the darkness. So it's a really special time of year, and that's how we Jews act. When it comes to cold and it comes to darkness, we just bring more light and more celebration, because that's how we survive, and that's how we survive, and we don't only survive, but we thrive. So let's start with the story of Yud Tes Kislev. What is it? So when we talk about Yud Tes Kislev, this is called we were going back to the year 1798 to the founder of the Chabad Chassidic movement. Now, all the things that we always study in this class is based on the inner dimension of the Torah. We talk about the story of the Torah, but we don't always talk about just the story. We don't just tell you what the story of what happens in the Parsha happens, but we go into a deeper meaning and how we could apply it to ourselves, what lessons we can learn from ourselves, how it reflects really the spiritual physiology of a person. That's what we always go into. And this is all based on Chassidut, on the inner dimension of teachings of Torah. So there's a lot, when we look at Torah, there's a lot of dimensions to Torah. There's the plain meaning, the simple meaning of Torah. That means just the simple meaning of the story. Then you also have different hints, remez, different ideas that it hints to. Then you go deeper, you have different other ideas that are explained by it. And then you go even deeper and you have the mystical concepts of the Torah teachings. But Chassidus is talking about the essence of all of these. It permeates all these different levels by giving it a different meaning and a deeper meaning so that we can understand it on a level that really relates to us. So some of us are not like, I think all of us here are not mystics, that we could really understand the Kabbalistic meanings when it talks about it. But Chassidus we can all understand because it applies it to ourselves. It's not just talking about the spiritual anatomy of creation, how the worlds were created. It's like if you hear from a physics professor, he's going to tell you like all about the different, I don't even know what he's going to tell you because I'm not good at that, but I'll tell you like all the different parts of the anatomy of creation and the anatomy of science. And, someone who doesn't understand that stuff won't really relate to it. But when you talk about Chassidus, it includes all these ideas, but then it applies it to how we can learn from it, what we can learn from it. Not just like in theory, what is it reflecting, but what we can learn from it. So in the year 1798, the founder of the Chabad Chassidic movement, which is called the Alter Rebbe, the older rabbi, he was put into prison and he was released on this day in the year 1798. All good Jewish leaders have been in prison.
Yes.
Once you've been in prison, you know you made it, right? So
the
he was.
Italians are like that.
Yeah, really. Is that interesting? So he was released
Not
from
to compare.
Not to compare. He was released from prison on this day in the year 1798 after being there for 53 days. And we're going to go through the story of how he got there. Now, when we talk about the Chassidic movement in general, if any of you have ever heard of the Baal Shem Tov?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so the Baal Shem Tov was the founder of all the Chassidic movements, and his successor was the Maggid of Mezrich. And then his successor, he had many, many different students. And this is where it branched off into different kinds of Chassidim. So we have the Chabad Chassidus, which took the teachings of the Baal Shem Tov and applied it in a very rational way so that you can actually understand it. So you have, let's say, the book of Tanya, which we often speak about, which is a very complicated book that actually teaches you about how to understand your spiritual anatomy. What is a person? What is a Jew? What makes you a Jew? How do you act as a Jew? How do you overcome situations as a Jew? What's the psychological things that are going through you when you're struggling with an issue? And this is what the whole book of Tanya speaks about, and how we can succeed in this struggle and challenge that we're in this world. So originally, when the Baal Shem Tov started teaching the Chassidic ideas, they were like little nutshells of an idea. It was ideas, but it wasn't so much that you could actually study it and you could actually learn it. The Alter Rebbe, the Rabbi Shneur Zalman of Liadi, made it into like a systematic way that you could actually open it, study it, and he made it for all people, near and far. A lot of people became very immersed in these teachings and started learning these teachings. Now, anytime that there are Jews, there's always opposition. And so there was a lot of, sorry? This is within the Jews. This is the story, unfortunately, of the Jews. Unfortunately, this has always been our story. And when we talk about afterwards about Hanukkah, we speak about the Greeks a lot, but it was also the Hellenistic Jews who created terrible, terrible problems for the Jews, and they were the ones that started it. So when we talk about the story of Yud Tes Kislev, what actually happened in this story is that there were people who were very against the teachings of the Alter Rebbe. And they were against the teachings because they said, you're taking such lofty ideas. These are hidden ideas, inner dimension of Torah. You're taking hidden ideas about God and the Jewish soul and things that were just known to select people and mystics before then. And you're making it into a way that everyone can learn it. And not only everyone, but it's for all of us to learn, and we can all learn from it and grow from it. And they were against that. They didn't feel that it was correct to take such holy teachings and translate it in a way that could be accessible for every person. So when they decided that he was doing this, and they also misunderstood a lot of what he was doing. They didn't understand him as a person. And what he was doing was mistranslated into ideas that were foreign to Judaism. It's like the next best thing to Judaism is Chabad. Have you ever heard of that, right? Like, which just means that it's like different ideas that are different, that, regular Judaism up until that point wasn't the mainstream that was until then. And we're going to talk about what those ideas are, but first I want to tell you the story of what happened on this day. So what happens was that there was a lot of opposition to his teachings, specifically to when he started to systemize the teachings, and specifically when he made it so much that so many people were studying. It became a very popular way of people studying these teachings, and not just the great scholars, but the everyday person could actually study it. So what happened was there was this tremendous opposition, and they decided that the Alter Rebbe had gone too far with his teachings, and so they decided to stop him. And how were they going to stop him? This was in Tsarist Russia. So they decided to create a libel against him and send it to the Tsar at the time. Yes. So they wrote a letter to the Tsar saying that he was planning a revolution against the government. And what did they bring as proof? So the Alter Rebbe used to raise a lot of money for the Jews that were living in Israel at the time. For people who say that there wasn't people that were Jews who lived in Israel when it was empty, there was always settlements that were in Israel. We're talking 1798. So he used to send money He used to try to raise money and send it to the empire. There wasn't the great economy that Israel has nowadays. There wasn't the great farming that Israel has nowadays. It was very, very hard to have any kind of living there at all. And the people who were there, it was really a tremendous amount of self-sacrifice because you couldn't make parnassah, you couldn't make a livelihood there. So he would try to raise money for the Jews that lived in Israel and send money there. So one of the claims that these people that were opposed to him made to the Tsar is that he's sending money not to the people of Israel, but to the government of Israel. And the government of Israel at the time was Turkey. And Russia and Turkey were at odds. And this got the Tsar very upset. Like, if he's sending money to Turkey, he's trying to help our enemy. What's going on here? That was the first claim that they sent against him. They also said the claim that since he is he's encouraging people, like even simple people, and he's saying, like, at that time, the way that the Jewish community was structured is there were scholars who were really Talmidei Chachamim, people who were very knowledgeable, and there was kind of like a hierarchy in society. Someone who was very learned and well-versed in Torah was considered like someone really special, as should be, and he was respected. And then lower on the totem pole would be like the average person. And the average person who was ignorant was considered very lowly and not connected to God, and just like considered in a very negative kind of way. And he, just like the Baal Shem Tov, but he on an even greater level, because he actually made this part of his teaching, would tell these people that were ignorant or not learned how connected they are to God, how they have a soul, and that soul is completely connected to God no matter how much you know or how much you don't know. And it was this encouragement telling these simple people that their prayers, the simple prayers that they're saying, even if they're mispronouncing some of the words and they can't even say the words, this is so precious to God. This is so holy and so precious. So the accusation that the people who were opposed to the Alter Rebbe said to the Tsar, look, he's even trying to create an uprising. He's trying to tell the simple people how important they are, how special they are, and create this independence, which a Tsar is always afraid of, because he's always afraid of an uprising. If you tell people that they're special, there's no longer that hierarchy, there's no longer that authority. They feel that they are something. So they said he's trying to cause an uprising amongst the people. And thirdly, they said he's also taking Judaism, and even Judaism, he's distorting Judaism. He's adding different things in the prayers. He's adding different parts to it. He's making that the simple people are important. So even Judaism, he's taking it and kind of making his own religion almost, which again is a way of disregarding authority, because he's thinking that he's authority. So he's disregarding authority. And when the Tsar heard all these claims against him, he got very nervous, because he was the way that it is in an authoritarian government is if there's anyone who claims anything against the authority, that's a problem. There's going to be an uprising. So he heard all these claims and he decided he has to do something about it. He was afraid of this uprising. So he ordered that Rabbi Shneur Zalman of Liadi, that he should be arrested. And this was on...
Is he the Alter Rebbe?
That's the Alter Rebbe, yes. The Alter Rebbe is Rabbi Shneur Zalman, yes.
And Baal Shem Tov is
The previous, like his predecessor, like, yeah. His predecessor who taught, who was the founder of the Chassidic movement, but Rabbi Shneur Zalman, or the Alter Rebbe, is the founder of the Chabad Chassidic movement. Okay, so, and Chabad actually means intellect, because he developed Chachma Bina and Dat, exactly, because he expounded these ideas in a very systematic intellectual idea that you could open a book and you could actually understand it. It wasn't just something that you did through your emotions, but you could actually learn it and become well versed in understanding it. So the Tsar decided to arrest the Alter Rebbe, and this was on Sukkot, Cholamod Sukkot, the intermediary days of Sukkot in the year 1798. The Tsar's officers came to Liozna, which is where he was, to arrest the Alter Rebbe. And as they came, he kind of sneaked out through the back door of the house so they wouldn't catch him, which was something that was common in Russia. My mother says that they came to arrest my grandfather and he just kind of snuck out. Like everyone's looking around and there was 2 different doors, right? So he snuck out through the back door, but the Chassidim realized that he was going to be arrested, so they made an agreement with the government that they would come back and arrest him after Sukkot, when Sukkot was over, so at least he would be able to stay for Sukkot. So the day after Sukkot, on Isru Chag, on the day after, it was a Thursday that year, and the officers returned to arrest him. And they came to arrest him on charges of treason. They came with this black carriage, which was like specially armored carriage that was so protected, which was really for the worst possible criminals, those who were accused of treason. And the Alter Rebbe then realized what the student of the Baal Shem Tov, who was his teacher, had said. He said that you are going to go through a lot of hardship. And this was the hardship he realized that he would have to be going through. So he's arrested on these charges of treason. He's going in this black carriage that they use for dangerous criminals. And this was, I said, Thursday. They're traveling with it, and they're taking him to this fortress, and it's already Friday. And it's Friday at midday. And as it's Friday at midday, the Alter Rebbe says, we need to stop the wagon because I don't travel past midday. Midday is like 12 o'clock or something, you know. And they're like, excuse us, you know. And they're like, you know, laughing at him. What do you mean you don't travel on midday? You're not the one who's giving the orders here, right? You're a prisoner who's being taken. And so they don't listen to him. And as a couple minutes later, the axle of the wheel breaks. They send to get it fixed. Someone comes and fixes it. They start to travel again. The horse dies. They replace the horse. A new horse comes. And the 2 horses cannot move. And at that point, they realize that this isn't just a regular person. This is a very holy person. So at that point, they ask him, is it okay for us to just travel a little further to the next town? Because it's Chatzot Hayom, it's a midday, which is probably around 12, 1 o'clock. There's still time till Shabbat. But he says he doesn't travel past that time. Can we just travel at least to the next village to stay there over Shabbat? And he refuses. He says, no, you could just pull over to the side of the road, but that's it, instead of the carriage being right on the road. So the carriage pulled over to the side of the road, and there are people who are Chassidim who actually know exactly which city he was in, where it was, and they identify the tree that he stayed in that entire Shabbat. I don't know how. They say that there's only like one tree that's like a flourishing tree, and it was under that tree that he spent Shabbat, and the rest of the trees are kind of very straggly and not very, very lush. So that's where he spent the Shabbat. Now, the following after Shabbat, they again traveled. At this point, he allows them to travel, and they bring him to Petersburg, to this fortress, which is a prison of extremely high security. Now, at this point, the Chassidim are working. They divide into 3 different groups. One to work on freeing the Alter Rebbe from prison, and to continue. The second group was to continue raising money for the Jews in Israel because they still needed money when the Alter Rebbe was put into prison. And the third group was to strengthen the learning of Chassidut, the learning that the Alter Rebbe was teaching, so that we can merit that there should be a salvation for us all. This is how the different groups of the Chassidim were. It was interesting, I saw that some of the Chassidim, they didn't have a lot of money. We're talking about in Russia, but they tried to raise as much money as they could for the Jews in Israel, and now they had to raise money to actually bribe people so that they could free the Alter Rebbe. So you know how the talus has like a silver part on it? So it says that they actually sold the silver part of the atara of their talit so that they can give the money. And then once he was free, they didn't have the money to buy it back. So that actually became the custom. If you look at Chabad Talesim, we don't have the atara.
Oh, really?
So that's where I guess it started. Okay, so he's in prison now. They take him to this fortress and he's in prison. And there's a warden there. And the warden is actually a very intelligent man. And he looks at the Alter Rebbe and he sees he's a holy man, he's a scholar. And he says, I'm very well versed with the Bible. And even though he wasn't Jewish, but he was just speaking to the Alter Rebbe about it. And he says, I want an answer. It says in the Torah that God turned to Adam after Adam had the sin. And God says to him, Ayeka, where are you? God is trying to start a conversation with Adam. And he says, Ayeka, where are you? He says, why did God say to Adam, where are you? Doesn't God know where he was? And he said, I know the explanation that Rashi, the foremost commentary on the Torah, gives. That commentary, the Rashi says that God was just trying to kind of like enter into conversation with him, make him feel like a little not so nervous, like where are you? And then talk about what he had just done. But that's how you kind of enter into conversation. Like if a kid is misbehaving, you'll say, so how was your day? And then you'll go into what they did on that day, right? But you're kind of trying to make it into a conversation. This officer says to the Alter Rebbe, I already know that explanation of Rashi, so I would like to hear your personal explanation. And this is where the Alter Rebbe says to him, he says, do you believe that the Torah is given for all times, that it's relevant, the Bible is relevant for all times? And he was a religious man. He says, yes, I believe it's relevant for all times. He says, so this is God turning to Adam, to each and every one of us. And God is saying to each person individually, Ayeka, where are you? Where are you in your mission in life? Where are you in your purpose in life? And he says, and a person could live so and so many years, and at this point he quoted the exact age of this man, even though he didn't know what the age was, but the Alter Rebbe, with his holiness, knew the age of the man. He says, imagine it, you could be living so and so many years, and still have you found your purpose and the meaning of why you are here. And when the man heard that explanation, he realized, this is somebody who's really a holy person. This is really, and he even knew my age, how old I am. He understood that the person was a very holy person. So he's in this prison, and one night, it's interesting, it says that the Alter Rebbe did not want to eat anything because it wasn't kosher. And this officer said, don't worry, I'll make sure that you get special kosher food, you get fruits and vegetables, whatever things that you can eat, because he wanted him to be able to eat. So one night they are going to take the Alter Rebbe across the river. He's in this fortress with the river around it because it's maximum security. So they're going to take him across the river in a boat in order to be interrogated. And it happens to be that he wanted to say Kiddush Levana, where we say a blessing on the new moon as they're taking him. And so he asks if they could stop the boat so he could stand up and say the blessing on Kiddush Levana, on the blessing of the moon. And they said, no, they don't. Again, who are you to tell us what we're going to do? So at that point, the boat stopped.
I knew that was coming.
And it says he started saying the blessing, but he sat down, and they continued riding the boat. And then he asked again, could you stop it to let me to finish? And at that point they saw he was a holy man. They stopped and let it happen. Now, why did he ask them to stop the boat rather than him just stop it on his own? Mm-hmm. Because he wanted to do the mitzvah of Kiddush Levana not in a miraculous way. We're supposed to do mitzvot in a natural way. And asking them to stop the boat was a miracle, but he wanted to do it in a natural way, just like God asked us to do the mitzvot, not miraculously, but in a natural way. But this is the story that's told of when he was asked to do it. Now, the Tsar is hearing all these crazy stories about this holy man that's in prison. And he's like, I got to see this for myself. Who is this? I'm hearing all these rumors about these stories. Who is this man? So the Tsar himself decides, I'm going to come down and go to the Alter Rebbe's prison and see him there and visit him there. but I'm going to dress like a regular warden, so he's not going to know who I am, and I'm going to watch him and see what he's like. And so the Tsar comes dressed as a regular warden, and immediately the Alter Rebbe gets up and greets him with, saying, Your Highness, or whatever, the way that they greeted him. And he's like, what are you saying? I'm just a warden. And he's like, I feel a certain awe when you walked into the room, and that awe can only be felt for somebody of your caliber, the Tsar. And that's when the Tsar really realized that, okay, this is someone who is very special, and it's not just your regular person. Now, it says that even in prison, his predecessor, the Baal Shem Tov, who had already passed away, and the Maggid also came to visit him. Their souls came to visit him. They visited him in prison, and he was able to speak to them and communicate with them. And he asked them, why is this happening? And they told him it's happening because in the heavens there's some kind of persecution against you for taking these holy teachings and actually teaching them to just regular people. These are secrets of the Torah that were always hidden, and you're taking these secrets and teaching them to everybody. So he says, so should I be stopping? And they said, no, you shouldn't be stopping, because you're going to see that you're going to be vindicated, and you're going to be, when you are released from prison, that means that you're vindicated, and not only you're vindicated, but the vindication is coming from above to show you that yes, what you're doing is correct, and not only should you do it, but you should continue doing it with even greater intensity, which we see after he came out of prison. His teachings became even more specific, and even more it was so much more, the teachings, and they spread so much more as a result. So he was then asked to explain like all the different accusations that were brought against him. And it says he wrote in Lashon HaKodesh, in the Hebrew language, answers to all the questions. And those that were opposed to him also tried to bribe the person who was translating it to make sure that it sounded really bad, that it wasn't what he wrote. But Chassidim also got there, and they made sure that it was not mistranslated. And the answers were very smart and very intelligent, and he was exonerated, and they let him go. And this was 53 days after he was arrested. The day that he was released was on Yud Tes Kislev. Until he actually got out, it was between Yud Tet, the 19th of Kislev, and Chaf, which is the 20th of Kislev. And it says that he was actually saying the words of Tehillim for that day. Was the verse that he was saying was Pada b'shalom nafshi, my soul will be redeemed in peace. And that was as he was saying those words, that his soul will be redeemed in peace, he was released. Interestingly, he then published he was in prison for those 53 days. He published the 53 chapters of the Tanya, is what he published, and it was actually finally published and released for people. So that's the story, and that's what we're celebrating on this day that happened many, many years ago. So let's try to understand now.
Excuse me,
Yes.
do we have special symbols like Sukkot? We have something, Hanukkah we have, Pesach we have. Do we have something special that we
do on this day?
Yes.
So what we do is we gather, like have a Farbrengen, right? This is a Farbrengen where we gather. We also start. The book of Tanya is divided every single day. We try to learn a little parts of it, and it's divided into a year's study. So on this day, we begin the cycle of starting it again and learning it again. That's what we do on this day.
Like Simchat Torah with
Exactly, yes. And what's interesting, and now that you mention that, is we see that the Torah was given in the month of Sivan, right?
Yeah.
We were taken out of Mitzrayim in Nisan, and 2 months later, the Torah was given in Sivan.
Yeah.
So we have two heads of the year. We have Nisan, which is one head of the year. Like when, according to the Torah, Nisan is the first month of the year. It counts Nisan as month 1, Nisan Iyar is the month 2. But we also have Rosh Hashanah, which is in the month of Tishrei, which according to the Torah is the 6th month. But Rosh Hashanah is the new year. So we really have 2 heads of the year. We have Tishrei and we have Nisan. So, sorry? There's 2 more also, right. There's 2 more also. But these are like, yeah, but these are like, those are for specific other things. But this is the heads of the year. So 2 months after Nisan, we received the Torah in Sivan on Matan Torah when we celebrate the holiday of Shavuot. Tishrei is also the month of the head of the year, and when we look 2 months later, Cheshvan, Kislev, in the month of Kislev, we received another aspect of the Torah, the hidden dimension of the Torah, which is what Chassidut teaches us. So that was another kind of giving of the Torah, but the giving of the Torah, that's the inner dimension, the secret dimension, which until then wasn't so known. So what is this secret teachings that we're talking about? Like, what is it that we're trying to understand? My husband was not brought up Chabad. He grew up in a family that was a religious family, but was not Chabad.
What was it?
It was,
Chassidic?
no, it was not Chassidim. It was called,
Not that one.
there wasn't any Chassidim. These are all different Chassidim.
Yeah.
It was like Litvish, if you know, like the Lakewood community. Lakewood,
Lakewood, I know.
Yes, so that's like,
I have
his
family
father was
there.
like very involved there.
Oh.
And when he was growing up and he was a teenager, he was very curious, intellectually curious, and he was exposed to, he was learning in a yeshiva that did not teach Chassidut, but they had this man, this rabbi, whose name was Rabbi Yoel Khan, and he would go around to different yeshivot and they would have this secret learning. Because even till today, like some of the yeshivot were not very happy
Really?
about them learning it. Yes.
Wow.
And it was like a whole secret thing. Like you didn't tell people. Like imagine a teenager would love this, right? Like wake up at 2 a.m, you go to sleep and you go to sleep in your clothes and no one knows, right? And then at like 2 a.m, you sneak out and you meet in this place and this, and what are they meeting to do? To learn Chassidut,
Wow.
to learn these teachings. So that's, yeah. So what is these secret teachings that we're talking about? Like what is it that we're saying? So we're going to try to understand it on a basic level. What is it that we're trying to understand and to learn? So when you look at Torah up until then, Torah was known as a book. That's a book of understanding, a godly book, a book that God gave us. And God gave us like this manual. He gave us this manual so that we could lead a good life, spiritually, materially, psychologically. The Torah is God's way of communicating with us how to live a productive life. And how are you going to live a productive life? By keeping the mitzvot, being nice to people around you, keeping the holidays, remembering the holidays, being grateful, being more spiritual people, being more selfless people. That's how Torah was understood, this book of understanding, a manual that God gave us to navigate this world, to navigate our way in this world. Now, why did God give it to us? Because he wanted us to be good people. He wanted us to be spiritual people. He wanted us to be successful. So God is a God of kindness, and in God's infinite kindness, he wanted to do kindness to us to teach us how to live this kind of life. Now, Chassidus comes and says something very revolutionary. And what does it say? It says that it wasn't only that God wanted to do a kindness for us, but are you ready for it?
Here's the secret.
This is the secret. But God actually needs us.
Oh.
God wants a relationship with us. It's not that just God wanted to do a kindness to us and he wants us to learn how to be good people, and of course that's true. God wants us to have a good life, and he's giving, but more than that, God wanted a home here in this physical world. Dira b'tachtonim, a dira, a place, a home in this lower world, not a relationship with angels, but a relationship with us, with human beings. Now, of course, I have to just in brackets say that God doesn't have any needs because God is infinite. So God doesn't have any needs. But God has desires. God has wants. And when God decided that he wanted this became his want. So it's kind of a want that he doesn't have to have because he's perfect. He doesn't need things, but he wants to have this need. And so we are helping God, which is kind of like, wow, can you imagine? We're
Spoiler alert.
Yeah, spoiler alert. Like, whoa, this is revolutionary that we, little us, are helping God in our relationship, to have a relationship with us. You know, it's kind of like I like to talk about when my youngest daughter she's now 21. When she was a little girl, we used to bake in the kitchen, like everyone does. And when she was like 2 years old, she would say, "I'm helping mommy," right? And she's trying to crack the eggs, and you can imagine where it went. And she's like,
Same thing.
right? Well, now we do with our grandchildren, right?
Yep.
And pour measure the sugar, and the sugar's like trail of it all
Yep.
over the floor. But she's saying, "I'm helping mommy," with this pride, like anything. And the truth is, she was helping me, not in order to make the cake, but she was helping me. How was she helping me? She was giving me something that I couldn't have, which was a relationship with her. So she was helping me to have that relationship with her. So she thinks she's helping me to make the cake. That's not what she's helping me with. But she is giving me something that I couldn't have otherwise. And that's what God wanted. He wanted us, not because we know how to make the cakes. We make a big mess in this world. It's like a really big mess. But in working with us and doing what we're supposed to be doing in this world, he's having this relationship with us, with human beings that live here in this lowly world, and having a relationship with us. Now, in order to have a relationship, though, with someone, you have to have something that the person has. I can't have a relationship with an ant. An ant, a little crawly thing. There's no relationship. In order to have a relationship, you need to have people that are somehow have something similar that they can relate to. So how is it that me, this little tiny being, has a relationship with this infinite, all-powerful God? It just doesn't work. How is it that I can have that relationship? The only way that I can have that relationship with God is if God puts inside of me an actual piece of God himself.
Wow.
Right? Because then he's having a relationship with something that's godly. Because how can you have a relationship with a little ant? You can't. But you can have a relationship with a person who has this godly piece. And this is what the Alter Rebbe writes in the Tanya, that this part of our soul is a chelek elokah mimal mamish. This is an actual part of God. And he writes the word mamish, which means literally. We're not talking in a metaphor that this is a piece of God, that we're godly beings or we're angelic beings. Or we are literally, we have this literal piece of God inside of us. And this is something that's like, whoa. Now, of course, in order to have a relationship, though, you don't want a robot. So God is having this relationship with us godly beings. But if we're godly beings, then the only things that we're going to be doing is only good things, right? But in order for it to be a real choice, that we're really choosing God in this relationship, that we're really choosing to do godly things, spiritual things, God also gives us an animalistic self, a human self, that human part of us that is selfish and that doesn't want to be godly and that's grounded and that's materialistic and that isn't interested. And when we choose to be godly beings in spite of our materialism, in spite of that pull that wants to be selfish and self-centered, when we choose to be godly nevertheless, that is what gives God the greatest pleasure in this world. And that's why God created the world, to have that relationship with us. So this was always understood by people, by great mystics, but it wasn't understood by the regular people. The regular person thought the Torah is a book that is God giving us this book, this manual of how to live. It wasn't about this relationship. It wasn't about us giving something back to God, us doing something for God, God needing us. It wasn't about this actual neshama, this actual part of God, literal part of God that we have. And that's why the communities were very built on this hierarchy. Like, the more that you are learned, that means the more you understand this book, this manual that God gave us, that more that you're, the greater person you are. But children or people who were not learned, who were ignorant, or even women who at the time were not so into the learning because they were busy with all the, the stuff of just survival, weren't considered so important. But comes the Chassidic movement and says, no, children, saying just learning the psukim, doing anything. Children have that in them. Ignorant people who take a book of Tehillim and say a few verses of Tehillim, even if you're mispronouncing it. It's your neshama that's shining. Women are even more than the men. It's obvious. Like, absolutely. And the Lubavitcher Rebbe went even further, and he said even special needs children, even people who are completely, this is the holiness of their neshama is just as holy as the greatest sage. So look at the holiness of the person. You can't say that a sage is important and this child who, God forbid, is even a vegetable is not important, because to the contrary, look, this child is a neshama. They're a God-given soul. Look at the holiness of this person. And so the intrinsic value of every person came to light. And when we have that neshama inside of us, it allows us to connect to something so deep, whether we're learned or not learned. It allows us to connect to something of who we are, what our essence is. And that's why we saw in today's times, this is an example for today's times, how you see with the hostages that even in the tunnels of Gaza, they're relating to something deep within themselves that they didn't even know they had, right? And you see this throughout history. You see this example. This is just an example that we see in today's times, but you see throughout history, people who are not even connected to Torah, when it came to taking them away from being Jews, to taking them away, deciding that you're not Jewish, to taking away that, when someone was forcing you to not be who you are, suddenly it evokes something inside of you that's so strong that you're ready to fight with all your might, because this is the essence of who I am. That neshama is me. The body isn't me. The body is a body. Of course, I use the body. I use the body to do everything that I need to do. But what is really the me, the essence of who I am? That is that spark within me, that part in me that's godly, that's actually godly. And this is connected really to Hanukkah, because what happened on Hanukkah, the Greeks came, and the Greeks were so numerous. They were so many. They were so many more. It was like 1,000 to 1. That's how many. And the Jewish people at the time, they were not warriors. They were farmers. They were learned. They weren't people who had any kind of equipment or warfare. And yet the Jewish people decided, the Greeks are making all these laws against us keeping Torah. They're not letting us keep Shabbat. They're not letting us keep Brit Milah. They're not letting us study Torah. It came to the point that they said, this is crazy. They're taking away the essence of who we are. And even the Jews would go and go to the hills and the mountains and study there and hide away from them. But even there they came and they found them. And Matityahu Kohen Gadol realized, this isn't working. We're not going to have any Jews in Israel anymore. There's not going to be Jews left in Israel, because they're forcing us to stop being Jewish. They want to change us and take away the Judaism from us. So this wasn't like an issue of God's gonna punish us because we're not keeping Torah. No, God wouldn't punish you because you were forced not to keep Torah. You were forced not to do it. So why is God's not gonna punish you? It was something far deeper. It was them saying, they're taking away from us our essence. They're taking away from us who we are. And so no matter what, this is worth fighting no matter what, because this is who we are. And we can't live this way because this is who we are. This is about who we are. And that's why they fought and they were victorious. And when they were victorious, they got back the Beit HaMikdash, because the Beit HaMikdash was defiled by the Greeks. And they were kind of like saying, God, we did everything for you. Like, show us a sign, because this was not a time. This was after all the prophets. Prophecy had stopped. There was no communicating with God. And they're like, God, show us a sign that something that you're like, here we went all the way out for you. We tried to do everything. And finally they won. But it was a great loss. There was so many who were killed. Like we read about how they were victorious, but many died in these battles. And the battles lasted many, many years. It took a long, long time. And so they finally get a hold of the Beit HaMikdash, and they're like, show us a sign. And that's when they lit the menorah. And it was kind of like God answering them, that this is what you did for me. Now I'm going to do for you. They only found that little one pure cruse of oil. And God says, now I'm going to do for you. And I'm going to show you that it lasted for 8 days. But what was it that caused them to do this fight? That part that's inside of them, the part that's within each and every one of us, that neshama that we each have. And when we can realize this holiness that we have, this connection that we have, that this is our essence, this is who we are. No matter our outward behavior, how much we're doing, how much we're not doing, that doesn't matter. I mean, of course it matters, but that's not who we are. That's not our essence. And so when we realize that, that gives us the strength, that gives us the ability to push forward, to be Am Yisrael, to be in touch, to recognize the essence of what we are. And when we have that understanding, we can push through the darkest of situations, the darkness, the dark nights of our situations that we're in. And what we do is we light a candle one night, and then we add another candle the next night, and we continue adding candles and candles and candles to show that we're going to be in touch with that part of ourselves. It says there's a pasuk that says, Kiner Elokim Nishmat Adam. The candle of God is the soul of a person. A person's soul is like a candle, and that candle is lighting us up. And what we're doing is we're saying that candle that they tried to ignite, to extinguish, thank you. That candle that they tried to extinguish, that soul of ours that they tried to extinguish, is what the Greeks were trying to do. They weren't saying don't be Jewish. They were saying you could be Jews, but don't be Jews that keep the Torah. Don't keep Jews that are connected to God. Don't keep Jews. You can even have cultural events. You can even have holidays, but don't do it because you're in a relationship with God. And we're saying, no, that part of us, that neshama, is the candle that we keep on lighting. And in the darkness of the night, that candle is never, ever going to be extinguished. And throughout history, we see that candle has never been extinguished, and it's not going to be extinguished. And people try to keep extinguishing it, and they try with all kinds of things to blow it out and to snuff it out and to throw water at it, to throw bombs at it, to throw everything at it. But that candle is never going to be extinguished, because this is who we are. So the takeaway message from Yud Tes Kislev and from Hanukkah is, this is the essence of who we are. We are a holy nation. We are a nation that actually has a part of God inside of us. And that makes us people who can overcome the greatest difficulties and the greatest challenges. And no one is going to ever extinguish that light. We will continue to be until the coming of Mashiach, when God's light will suffuse all of humanity, and everyone will want the peace, and everyone will recognize the morality and the way of God in this world, and a way of peace in this world. And we will lead the way till that, because we are ambassadors of light to the world. Our neshama is that light, and we can light up the darkness of our world. Our purpose here is to be people who bring light to the world. And we are all doing that here by gathering here tonight. And we have been doing it for the last thousands of years, and we continue to do that.
This is amazing to hear